Most of us who are aware of the hoax probably have an idea of what the final step of the plan looks like. Personally, I imagine a cyber-humanoid race of miserable slaves who live in megacities, don't do anything except for work, and can't reproduce. But how do we reach this destination? To answer that, I want to focus on 4 trends that took place in different countries as pilot versions of the greater plan. Understanding these trends will help you prepare for whatever happens wherever you are, since I believe that every country is going to implement one of these measures at some point. The first trend I want to mention is what has been going on in the USA for the last couple of years. For a long time, a race-based civil war has been cooked. It started with Hollywood promoting hate against white people.
That's the story of black people in America. These Dutch motherfuckers set foot here and decided they white, and you get to be black, and that's the nice name they call you?
Tell me I didn't just hear that. Did this nigga give me permission to search his car?
I believe he did, Sheriff.
This one thinks he's smart.
When the band starts in swinging, get the crowd to join in singing. Go, 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 turn him on. Go, 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 make it blow.
And continued with billionaires financing violent groups on both extremes, while paying off local police force in order to instruct it not to interrupt riots and clashes. The ruling class has put a lot of effort in dividing the population to rival groups. It might sound weird, but if that sounds like your country, you are living the best scenario you could ask for. Your region is united, and your status as a free person is strong in comparison with people in other countries. To prove my point, let me introduce you to the second trend I noticed: the martial law and zero tolerance policy implemented in Australia. Here's a clip I watched some time ago.
It's those doing the wrong thing driving our record case numbers. Among the most concerning cases, a patient who's tonight on the run from a hotspot. Police and health authorities have issued an urgent appeal.
Anthony Karam knows he's positive when he steps into this public lift. Already breaking so many rules, he doesn't bother to cover his mouth as he sneezes and splutters. The 27-year-old is still infectious but has gone missing from his Wentworth Point apartment. A warrant now issued for his arrest.
One example of the worst of the worst.
There's little sympathy for anyone ignoring the health orders, even this group of teenagers caught partying after dark at the bottom of the North Bondi Cliffs. The 8 boys were placed in handcuffs and left to explain a $1,000 fine to mum. It's getting harder and harder to hide if you're doing the wrong thing.
So the first time I watched this video I thought it was the Australian version of Saturday Night Live or something, but no, this is real. Everything is a crime in Australia, and committing a crime carries heavy penalties, regardless of how small and insignificant your crime was. I talked about Australia and specifically the state of Victoria in the past. The state of Victoria is a metropolitan with the perfect conditions to test the dystopian megacities that are planned to be used to cage us in the future. The warning signs could be seen months ahead, and now the giant prison consists of the entire country. Different reports suggest that Canada is heading in the same direction.
Cities across Quebec have increased police patrols to now include bars and restaurants, ensuring health guidelines are being followed. Brampton, Ontario has been just as aggressive, and it's paid off.
The third trend is the medical segregation that includes the use of an injection permit, which is taking place in Israel. People who choose not to get injected lose some of their basic rights. Some of those who did get injected accuse those who didn't for risking their health. But wait a minute, you may think. If someone is already injected, he shouldn't be scared of getting infected, isn't he? Well, yes. The people of Israel are taking part of a medical experiment without their consent. Populations like soldiers, students, and members of the working class are threatened with not being able to visit their family, not being able to continue their education, and loss of their income.
You're fired.
Unless they participate in the experiment. As in the Australian metropolitan, ideal conditions made it possible to implement this policy. And Israel got to be the lab to test the substances that will make the foundations of whatever sci-fi shit they have in mind for us. Back in the early days of the hoax, there were two extremely non-compliant and disobedient populations. These populations are Hasidic Jews and Arabs. The media made sure to incite the general public against these two groups, and police violence against Hasidic Jews became justified. The Arab public, however, did not suffer the same treatment. The reason that the police stayed out of Arab population centers is that there are a lot of firearms in these areas, which made them more difficult to deal with. Yes, it is that simple. After a year and a half of brainwashing and incitement, some citizens became extremely hostile to those who remained disobedient. The medical segregation pilot was successfully implemented in Israel, and the idea made its way to France and other European countries. Fourth trend is less of a trend and more of a late stage in the big plan, the Chinese social credit score that takes human rights away from disobedient citizens, is what I want to point out next. The result of you getting on the wrong side of your government is no work, no travel, just you slowly eating away your savings while not generating new income. Any new policy such as medical experiment or new law can be easily forced on a society that shows no pushback against it. So Australians became prisoners in their own country. Lockdowns are applied during holidays, so Jews in Israel must celebrate in secret as if it was the Spanish Inquisition. And the USA is heading towards a civil war. Did you ever imagine you will live to see history repeats itself in such a literal way? After knowing the different policies, maybe you noticed that there are intersections between them. Using harsh penalties, like what happens in Australia, is a necessary step when applying the Chinese social credit score. In order to push people into injecting poison into their body, it is crucial to incite against those who object the injections, while giving extra privileges and rewards to those who are obedient. This situation creates tensions between the two groups, similar to what happens in the US, only that in Israel the tension is expressed on smaller scale, resulting with either verbal or physical disputes. Whatever policy implemented, it is necessary to give people some space instead of pushing too hard. By giving the citizens enough time to get used to the situation, the authorities manage to reduce resistance. In all cases, media manipulation is always required to take over public's opinion. To successfully implement these policies, the government used the foot in the door technique. Often used by door-to-door salesmen, once a potential client opens the door for them, the salesperson immediately has their foot between the door and the wall, so the client isn't able to shut the door at them. The idea is to ask the other person for small requests. Do this little thing for me and I leave you alone. Once the client completes the request, the salesperson moves on to ask for a slightly bigger request, and the cycle continues until the salesperson achieves their goal, which is securing the sale. In our case, it's not hard to find similarities. Stay 2 weeks at home and we get back to normal. Download the Track and Trace app and we get back to normal. And so on, until our government secures the sale and we find ourselves in communist China. It's important to show that to people, because when they realized how the technique works, it becomes harder to fool them. It is not hard to guess what will be the next demands that our governments have for us. Complying with foreign police forces who will enforce any law. Big areas with what appears to be prison cells were spotted all over the world. These could either be penal facilities for disobedient citizens or camps for people who will be manipulated into voluntarily locking themselves inside. Part of the big plan is the end of private property. It is common for US agencies to seize assets of said criminals, such as drug dealers. In the same manner, not accepting whatever invasive treatment the government offers or questioning the mainstream narrative may turn you into a criminal. This could be one way of getting your property confiscated. To get out of the bad situation we found ourselves in, I suggest we try the foot in the door technique ourselves. One example is being required to wear a mask in the supermarket. The next time you go there, you can put the mask under your chin. The next day, have the mask in your hand. The day after, don't have it at all. Apply this technique to every situation where you want to claim your liberties back, and keep pushing the boundaries to see how far you can get without it having negative consequences.